Sweet, bro. Thabi, welcome to the potty.
Kia ora, thank you.
We were just sitting down and pretty much having a podcast before the microphone was running. But, you know, there's so much to go on here. But before we start, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself, bro.
Yep, kia ora, thank you for having me first and foremost. Called Thabi, toko ingoa. So my name's Thabi. I was born in Zimbabwe, moved to England when I was 2 years old. I say I moved, obviously my parents carried me, I had no say in the matter. From there we moved around quite a bit. So my dad was a doctor and he was getting stationed at different hospitals. I think that's how it works. The amount of times I've had to say this, you'd think I would research that and talk to him about it. Have not. So moved around, went to about 8 schools in probably 6 or 7 years.
Wow.
From there, we moved to Wellington, intermediate, high school here. Then I went to university. I studied finance, stats, and eco at the University of Auckland, which is honestly such a far cry from my identity now. So whenever I actually say that, it makes me chuckle / wince at those
true.
5 years. But hey, look. The parents feel happy that I have that degree, so that's okay. Then from there, I moved back down to Wellington, and then I worked in consultancy for a couple years. Left that. Now I work part-time in government, and then also have a media company with like a few different projects, working with a few friends of mine.
That's awesome, bro. And I guess one of the reasons we're really keen to get you on the podcast is...
It's because I slid in your DMs? Yeah, I did that.
Yeah. Works a treat every time. But you're obviously one of, you know, Wellington's fucking upcoming podcasters and just a really cool creative as well.
Not upcoming, I'm here, but thank you, Kane. Appreciate that.
It's the present. But with the podcast that you run with Kai, shout out Kai, I guess the premise is unpacking really some really topical issues in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And also looking into the deep, dark, ugly comment section that we have on social media.
That is very true.
So I was really keen to ask you, from your work sort of debunking comments in, you know, New Zealand Herald stuff, etc., all of the crazy shit that you get from people on social media, what has that taught you about like human psychology?
That's a good question. It's taught me a lot, and honestly, depending on the day you ask me, I'd give you a different answer. But I think, it was interesting the way that you framed it, because people often just talk negatively about the comment section. Both Kai and I will tell you, there is some really insightful stuff that's out there from people who are genuinely going through the effort of educating other people in the comment section, because people like to talk from the sidelines. People like to hate from when they're outside the club, when they can't even get in. So my favorite comments are when someone's like, kia ora, I was there. This is kind of like what it was from my perspective. But I think it's also taught me just to have empathy, because these people, for a lot of people who are voicing their concerns, voicing whatever, this is their respite. The reason why they're doing it on social media is probably because they don't necessarily have people in their life that they feel they can have those conversations to. Because that's the reason why when we see a really wild post on social media, we share it to our friends, because we're fortunate that we have them, that we can laugh about it, we can cry about it, we can get angry about it. Some people don't have that. So for a lot of people, it is just a sounding board. So when you understand that, I think you then sit back and it's like, there's no point in me just like trolling and laughing at them. Because I think early on, you know, we did a bit of grammar policing. We also did a bit of, how could they think that? But I think we've moved to a place now where we're truly just trying to understand why people think the way that they think. Because from there, you can then be like, oh, okay, I understand why you would say that. Maybe I disagree. Maybe this is what is actually correct. So I think empathy would be the big thing.
That's such a good take on it, actually. Hearing that people, because 100%, if I see like a funny meme, something crazy, outrageous, I've got like group chats and stuff where I chuck it in. Boys, what do you think of this?
Exactly.
But if people don't have that avenue, where are they turning to?
They're going to just comment right there.
I was talking to Ashton as well. Shout out to Ashton. The guy,
my guy,
yeah, our guy. He's doing all of the filming and stuff for the potty now.
Has a lovely necklace as well. Honestly, my guy's looking good.
Shout out Ashton. But we were talking, you know, within social media, perhaps there needs to be more accountability for people with what they post. So many of these. It'll be interesting if you've seen it through your work.
Yeah.
But if you're on TikTok, for example, social media crack. A lot of people. A lot of people through videos and stuff, they'll post hateful comments, but they'll be doing it under like an anonymous banner or an anonymous profile.
Yeah.
So do you think there's some sort of, like, what could be done with the accountability piece there for what people are saying?
So I think I would ask the question to you that if we don't really have accountability in life, how can we then have accountability on social media? Because if you think about it, social media is just a platform for people to express themselves, express their day-to-day lives. And if we don't have accountability for people saying wild stuff day to day, people saying racist, sexist, transphobic stuff day to day, then it will be very difficult for us to create accountability online. Now, maybe you could say you could restrict people's accounts, and you can't really restrict people in public. I mean, we obviously do try to do that in other ways, not going to go into that, but I think we really need to take just like a closer look at society on the whole and the way people operate and move, and then it'll be a lot easier to maybe change behavior or for people to be held accountable on social media. Because, as I said, it's just a platform. This is an expression of our society. If we had accountability in society, we would probably have a better form of accountability on social media.
How do you think social media and the comment section has changed society?
I think for a lot of people, including myself, it's given me insight to people's opinions that I would never spend time with. Because realistically, the people that I spend time with on a day-to-day basis, and I think this is kind of a problem with the way that we've constructed things. Like it's kind of manufactured in the sense that I only spend time with people who are all around the same age, all mid-20s. Like, aside from when I see my parents, I was at university up in Auckland, and I think I was just walking to class, and then I saw there was like this young kid that was walking by, and I was like, damn, I haven't seen a young kid in maybe months.
True.
And that is, I don't think that should be how society is. We should be existing amongst all age groups, different genders, different perspectives. So I think it showed me a lot of other people's perspectives that I would never, ever, ever really spend time with in person. Now, in some cases, that may be because I wouldn't choose to spend time with them, but ultimately, living in a bubble of all of my opinions are cool and we're so progressive, blah, 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 does nothing except boost my ego, which is nice, but also doesn't really move society forward in any way, shape, or form.
Totally. And it's funny, within social media, the social media realm as well, the algorithm feeds you into that bias and into that bubble.
Doing.
So you're
they
in this,
got us.
you're in this echo chamber, which just reinforces what you already think.
Yeah. And I think I will say that for some people, safety is, well, I think for everybody, safety is their priority. And I don't just think it should be just like willy-nilly. Like, people intentionally create bubble safe spaces because maybe in the rest of the world, in their day-to-day, they don't have that safe space. So I think in that sense, people should have autonomy to do what they want to, within reason, if it's not harming anybody on social media.
Where did the inspiration for the Unpack podcast come from, bro?
So that would be a good question for Kai, because he came up with the idea. He had a lot of time on radio with Salient, the Victoria University magazine. And I think it was just something that he actually just came up with as an idea to kind of look at the comment section. And then I think because education is something which I hold very, very close to me. Like, my life dream is to get to like 55, 60 still, determining, retirement ages may change, so that may change my life plan, is to retire and become probably a high school teacher.
Cool, man.
And I'd love to teach social studies because that would give me the widest remit to just teach them whatever I want to.
Yeah, true.
So education is something which is just like core to my being, and it's a very, I don't want to generalize, it's a very Zimbabwean thing to care a lot about education. My parents will love me saying that, so shout out mum and dad.
Shout out mum and dad.
And then I think I kind of push like a lot of the educational kind of like aspect of it. Like, I think in the first episode, somebody said that we should kick those apes out of touch. We'll just scoot past the racial component of that. And then I was like, okay, cool. How could we actually create a prison on a mystical island? And went into the expenses, how that would work, to educate people on how silly of an idea this is. And then through other episodes as well, we've just been able to do a bit of education. Now, we don't have all the answers. We have wonderful researchers and a team behind us, but I don't know. I think there's not much else that gives you that warm, gooey feeling of like teaching somebody something, mentoring them, educating them. So that's where I kind of have pushed that through Unpack.
What have been some of like the biggest learnings that you've had throughout the episodes that you choose to focus your content on? Because you look through them, and one of the ones that really stood out to me was the one that you did on the doll.
Yeah.
I think, if I remember correctly, you looked into whether or not benefit fraud was as big. Was there something around there, benefit fraud?
Yeah, so people in general, in New Zealand, in the world, love to essentially shit on poor people.
Yeah.
They love to shit on people that are disadvantaged and are having a tough time. They love to count their pennies. They love to count their money. So in New Zealand, people spend a lot of time complaining about benefit fraud. So there will be people who are claiming the benefit when by the system I don't have enough knowledge of the system, has determined that they shouldn't actually be getting that money. And we complain so much more about them than wealthier people who are evading and not paying their fair share of taxes. And that is such a tiresome take, but you will see it every single time there's a such and such benefit fraud. Oh, the comments are so angry and aggressive. And then when there's like a business person who hasn't been paying tax for 20, 30 years, they're like, oh, well, they worked the system. It's like, no, they're literally taking money from our back pockets, from our services. If you complain about the potholes on the road, it's because people aren't paying their fair share. And my thing is like, who should we complain more about? People who are struggling to make ends meet, or people who have a lot and are being sneaky about it. So if you actually looked, I think, at the numbers, financially, the amount of money that we're losing out on from tax evasion, tax avoidance, and I can't remember which one, but one of them is legal, one of them is not, is so much more than the amount of money that we are losing out on from benefit fraud. But sometimes people don't like to look at the numbers, and that's fine.
It's crazy. And speaking of numbers, because I did want to speak to you about this.
The segue king, I love it.
We have got Inland Revenue has found that 107 out of 161 high wealth individuals who own or control more than $50 million worth of assets declared their personal income in the last financial year was less than $70,000.
Yeah, see, like that just does not seem right.
And it's just
fair.
accepted, right?
It's just accepted that like, oh no, they're smart enough to get their way around it. And I think it's because people think that they will somehow get to that point and do the same thing. When I can guarantee you are more likely to at some point in your life need assistance from the government than you are to be a multi-millionaire. So my question is, who should we fight for? I mean, to me, it's pretty easy, but...
And you hear so much this rhetoric as well coming into a political cycle as well, heading into an election.
Bro, it's tiresome. It's literally the same old rhetoric every single time.
It's crazy with a new catchword or a new phrase to it, right?
Or even the same ones. We've been hearing tough on crime since the dawn of life, and it's just like being debunked as just being a horrible thing to do. Yet it'll still be rolled out, and people will still end up being a fan of those policies. And the thing is, I'm fortunate enough and I'm interested in this, so I engage critically in a lot of media and in politics in general. I understand that for some people it's not their biggest priority, and I think that's been intentionally created by the system. So, hey, I'm not here just poo-pooing on people. I understand. They've got a lot of things going on in their life.
Yeah, man. I think I sort of half asked the question, then answered it for you with the question I asked before the benefit fraud piece. But through your work with Unpack, what has been, I guess, some of the highlights and some of the learnings that you've had sort of look at and really honing in and researching some of these issues?
I think the biggest thing is just that media literacy is just such so underrated skill in society. Being able to read an article and be like, okay, so what company published this? What is the money behind it? What is the ulterior motive? What message are they trying to send? And if you can, there'll be a lovely wee framework that's out there. Don't listen to my random 4 questions, but there'll be a lovely framework that'll help people actually think about, okay, when I read something, what questions should I be asking myself? Because people talk a lot now about how the media is so bad, blah, blah, blah. It's like, this has been the same thing since the dawn of time. It's just now they're facing maybe a little bit of accountability. But a big thing that I've learned as well is that history in schools and the kind of the lack of, I think it's just wild that New Zealand history is only just being taught or they're implementing it now. This is the country we are in. Why are we not learning about the history? And when you ask yourselves, okay, who are the people who create the curriculums? Who are the people who create the systems we exist in? You can then understand why we're not learning about the horrible history this country has.
So true.
So it's all about asking, okay, why would they do that? Why wouldn't they do that? And then from there, you'll get a better understanding of the world, people's motives, and why they do what they do. So I think, honestly, I studied statistics at university. There was a paper, Stats 105, Lies, Damn Lies and Statistics. We literally went over media literacy skills. I think that is a paper which every single student should do. And I think you probably ask most people who go to university, they'll each have a paper they think everybody should do. That paper genuinely changed my life.
True.
It it changed my life.
True.
I wish I could like say I don't remember the lectures. I wish I could like shout them out, but that paper really put me on the path to where I am now.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What do you think for people who, you know, live a fucking really busy life and they don't have that education behind them to sort of dissect media articles? And I guess so much of our existence through social media is looked through the lens of headlines. So
Which is tough.
How do we re-educate people to, you know, see hidden motives hidden in these sort of texts? And
That's a very good question, because I love to wax satirical about just burn the system down, but it's like, how do we actually do it? Well, I think first and foremost, there should be something that's taught in schools about this.
Yeah.
Like, I fundamentally think that media literacy and just, not even media, but just understanding people, discussion, discourse should be something that's taught a lot more thoroughly if it is in school. It's been a while since I've been at school, so don't know. If somebody lives a busy life, I think the first thing I would do is just ask them, when they're reading something, why do they think that the things that are being said in the article is being said? If you just ask why, from there, I think you'll get like a decent understanding as, okay, maybe because this media company has always interviews business people and always interviews business owners instead of actually people working on the ground. Okay, maybe it's because they want to promote business. And then from there, once you look through any other article through that lens, you'll then be like, okay, I understand what they're trying to do. And I'm not discrediting that. Like, we should get perspectives from a lot of different sides. But I think if you just ask why, you'll then be able to get an understanding as to what they're doing with the piece of media that they're dissecting or whatever.
yeah, totally. Yeah, it's an interesting space, man. I just feel like the world has also changed so fucking much.
It has.
Over like the last, even from, you know, I've got a 7-year-old daughter, which is crazy, but even from telling her, like, I always think, what are the things that I'll be able to tell her that she didn't exist, you know, those things that didn't exist, when she wasn't born, right? So it's little things like, you know, the phone, we had to press a whole bunch of buttons to send a text. It's having the fat TV instead of like a bloody, what are they called?
LEDs.
LED, fucking 95-inch thin screen.
Honestly,
thing.
makes me feel like I'm washed. Here and there, I'm like, damn, I'm washed up, you know? But yeah, no.
It is wild. And it just makes me think, like, I love making I don't know, just looking at hypothetical assumptions into what the future will look like.
Okay, go off.
Well, you know, just what way is society sort of tilting towards? Like,
do you have any takes that you want to share?
Well, I just think of like dystopian futures, you know, like post-apocalyptic almost. It's my mind instantly goes to probably more the negative way. I think that's probably driven through social media and how short we are with people. Yeah.
Do you think that you found yourself becoming more short with people, like as time has gone on, and do you put that down to social media?
That's a really good question. I don't think shorter with people. Like, I've always been, and maybe I was starting to be, maybe that's like a subconscious way of why I've started the podcast, because I actually want to, you know, learn a lot more. Maybe I wasn't getting that in my life. But I always feel like I've been quite a curious person. I've always had the ability to make friends with as many people as I could quite easily, which has been nice. Helped me in the playground to not get bullied and stuff.
Honestly, so true.
But yeah,
so
man,
true.
I don't know. I think it probably stems back to when I look at the comment section, to be honest, and I see all of these other people's views and stuff, and it's like, how can you even think what you are obviously typing into Facebook and stuff? It just makes me almost lose a bit of hope in humanity.
Well, I think it's also taught us that, like, people are products of their environment, and I think if you look at comments and you're like, how could they even think that? Maybe try and understand where they're coming from. Maybe they have lived the most privileged life of anybody in the country. Or maybe there's somebody who's had a really tough time in life and they've been able to struggle and claw their way through. So they kind of ask, well, why can't everybody else? So when you understand that, you're a lot more understanding, because it's like, I can't really hate on somebody for not thinking from a different perspective. Like, we can sit here and talk about, we can look at these nuanced views, but we're very fortunate to have the skills, the abilities, the privileges, that we went to maybe like decent schools, that we maybe, you know, versus a lot of people don't have that. Or they do and they just choose not to engage, and that's a whole other conversation there.
Yeah, totally. In your view, what does the sort of society culture of New Zealand look like in 150 years?
I mean, God, the way climate change is going, not too great.
Yeah,
but,
shit. And we got bloody Cyclone
yeah,
Gabrielle coming.
yeah, not good. What
Fuck
does what does society look like in 150 years?
Yeah. Like, are we more connected, or are we like, is society moving more digital? So
Well,
maybe these personal connections aren't happening.
Yeah, people often talk about how social media has actually made us less connected, and I think it depends on the POV that you look at it from. But I think our lives are going to become more and more digitized, and there may be less kind of like personal interaction. And whether that's ultimately, I think it's probably leaning to be like a bad thing, but I think it's all about balance. You know, like you can, and people always like look at the negative side. I've been able to make friends with people online and then become, thank you. I would have never talked to you if it hadn't been for online. And this is like a positive relationship. So
Yeah,
things have gone well.
100%.
Shout out to social media.
DM's working.
Exactly. Got to slide into those DMs. Shoot your
slippery.
shot. They tell you what. Let's move on very quickly. So there's always going to be positive and negatives. It's just also safeguarding that and educating people on how to be safe on the internet. Because you can always find yourself in trouble. You can find yourself in trouble in life. You can find yourself in trouble on the internet. It's about being educated and knowing, cool, that's a situation I'm not getting involved in. Maybe I'll block that person just for your own personal safety. So I think I've definitely worked around the question because that was quite a tough one to answer.
No, man.
But that is my that's my take.
Yeah, man. That's good. Well, maybe this podcast will be like a time capsule, and people, will dig it up and be
Honestly,
like, "Oh, fuck, they were right."
please do not go back through old things that I've said. Honestly, I think about things that I probably said on Unpack like maybe 3 months ago. I'm like, oh, I had that take. God, that's embarrassing. Why does someone put a microphone in front of my face?
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
just
I'm like that all the time, eh? If I even try to listen to like an old podcast, I'm like,
it hurts.
what the fuck?
Kai sometimes listens back to our old stuff, and it's good that he does because I will not. There's just absolutely no way. Like, I won't even do it to boost listen numbers. Just even to hear the sound of like the intro, it's like, oh, no.
Yeah. Something I was also really keen to talk to you about is migrating over to New Zealand. What was some of the cultural shocks that you had when you first arrived here?
Oh.
I think I saw like a video that you had
no.
online, and you were saying the first day you came into Wellington, it was just
Yeah.
like a horrible, rainy, windy day.
In hindsight, I know what you're talking about. In hindsight, I think it was probably an average day in Wellington. It was just it was September, so you can think about what the weather's like then. It's not great, but it's not like horrible.
Yeah.
It was just a little bit windy, and my short self, I was wearing shorts. I was not built for it. Cultural differences. I think I don't know if this is a cultural difference. I remember on our first drive around Lyle Bay, we were in, I think, like a taxi or something like that. I remember hearing on the radio that somebody, because this was just around the time of the Rugby World Cup in France, where I think we lost in the quarterfinals. I'm not really impressed about rugby,
the Ford Pass.
Yeah, see, even the energy that you have, I'm like, bro, this was in 2000s. But hey, people love their rugby. And I remember hearing on the radio that somebody drove their tractor into a lake. And I was like, what? But then also, people in England would do the same thing about football. So, like, I can't sit here and say that is totally wild. One thing I do remember from my first few days in Wellington, and I think this is just me realizing the lack of diversity here, is that, so I was from England. English is the only language that I speak fluently. I was a little bit quiet at school for the first, surprising. Now look at me. But I was very quiet for the first week, and a lot of the students, actually a couple of students actually thought that I didn't speak English.
True.
Because from their point of view, people who are probably black in Wellington are coming from Africa and therefore cannot speak English. Even if I had come straight from Zimbabwe to New Zealand, I would have been able to speak English. I was just a bit shy. It was just a bit shy. And I think that is like something which is just etched in my memory of like, wow, there's people talk about how like New Zealand and Wellington is like very diverse. There are pockets of it, yes. Then there are pockets of just like, of not. Like I remember I came back from university to Wellington, I think I was 20 years old, and there was this guy there who came to me and said, "You're the second black person I've ever met."
No way.
And I was like, the bro is 20. That is wild to me.
That is crazy.
And it just speaks to, there are pockets of diversity and there are pockets of not diverse, homogeneity. Let's go with homogeneity. Great word, homogeneity.
Yeah.
So that is something which I think like, I will keep very front of mind and
Yeah.
will provide as an anecdote on every single bit of media because it,
Yeah,
it
man.
sounds good.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
So when you first moved over here from England,
Yeah.
what was your parents' motivation to move from England over to New Zealand?
So there were a few motivations. One was they just wanted like a better lifestyle. My name drop. My dad actually worked with Richie McCaw's sister. I think Richie McCaw's sister is a nurse. My dad's a doctor. So
Bro, you're
I think
basically
she was,
New Zealand royalty. You're famous now.
2 degrees of separation from Richie McCaw.
We're best mates.
Exactly, my bro. And they just like raved about New Zealand. My mum was looking for a job, and then also I had gone to boarding school in my last year in England, and I had no self-control when it came to food. So I kind of ballooned out to a very unhealthy, unhealthy lifestyle, unhealthy weight. And my parents were looking to get like a better lifestyle. And in New Zealand, it's like, oh, the walks, the da-da-da, the this, the outdoors life. So that was part of why they wanted to move. And I think they just grew tired of living in England. They just wanted like a fresh challenge.
True. That's a pretty good tourism push, from Richie
Yeah,
McCaw's
shout out
sister.
Clean. Yeah, no, honestly, good. Like, did a great job, and like the clean green branding, it worked because we're here.
True,
you
that's
know?
nice, man.
Yeah.
And what has the role of like the education sort of system played with you? Obviously, your parents have been very well educated. I'm someone who hasn't gone to university, and so it's really interesting to hear. And I feel like everybody you speak to who goes to uni, some people are like, "Oh, it's an absolute waste of time. I just wasn't fit in to get a job," or other people are like, I've actually, it really helped me build critical thinking skills that help me with my day to day, just living as a New Zealander in general or living in the global climate. What role has that played with you today?
I think for me, I think I'm the type of person that I think because I've got, if I do say so myself, very good social skills. I'm fortunate enough that even, say, if I hadn't gone to university, I probably would have been able to do relatively well for myself because I think we do underrate how much a role having good social skills, being personable, being able to make people laugh, being able to make people feel good is in terms of just the way your life is going to go. But I think for me, I was also not mature enough to be an adult at the age of like 19. Like if I'm being true to myself, there is no way I was. There's a reason why I went into a hall.
True.
There's a reason why I was then an RA for 2 years as well. Because I meant that like cooking, cleaning was like taken care of to a certain degree. But I think I wouldn't be able to be here without my university experience in terms of like my education. But I think the idea that university is the be all and end all for people is a problematic view. These institutions were created a long time ago and have not changed much and haven't really adapted much for the world we currently live in. So there really needs to be a big question in terms of, do they need to shift? Are they still fit for the purpose that they provide? They were originally just for higher education to push people into like honors, masters, PhD. Are they really there to help people get jobs?
Totally. That's a good question, eh?
I don't know. It'd be down to maybe some of the people who've gone to university and then also some of the lecturers as well.
Yeah. And I've had such a privileged way of, getting through different jobs and not going through university. And if I was to have gone to university, especially being a young dad, I would probably be about 8 career steps behind where I am now, just from working.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, just from, I guess it's always, a lot of my work has been the sort of practical experience, which has got to me to where I am today.
I see, yeah.
Which, I've been very, very lucky in that sense. And there still are, a lot of employers who will just look at, have you got a university degree or not? Yes, no, cool, you're in or you're out.
Yeah.
But, I think times are definitely changing. And,
I think people just have different experiences.
They
do. University isn't the be-all and end-all that it maybe once was, and I don't think it should be. And I think a big benefit of university is just the people that you're surrounded with. Like, I can't tell you the amount of, like, my friends who would have gotten a job or gotten a help out because, oh, you're David's son. Oh, yeah, no, come through. Like, that is just, it's New Zealand, it's small, there's 2 degrees of separation. I use and abuse that. If I'm maybe going to be talking to somebody, let me check on LinkedIn, mutual followers.
100%.
Oh, cool, I know that person. Mutual friends on Facebook. It makes New Zealand tick.
Yeah.
Like, I think somebody termed, I can't remember who it was, like the bro economy. Like, we have a very much like a bro economy. Oh, such and such. Oh, he's the bro.
Yeah.
There you go. Immediately, just more comfortable with you. Do you know?
Totally. Yeah, that is so true. And it's crazy, how many parties or something you go to and it's like, oh yeah, cool, I went to school with this person. And it's like, what? I know that person as well. It's just so...
It makes people more comfortable.
Yeah,
you know?
totally, man. It's so wild. I think moving from the education point, you also do the PhD podcast as well. PhD Unpack.
Oh, nice. Yeah, PhD Unpacked. Crushed it.
Can you talk a little bit more about what that is all about?
Yeah, so PhD Unpacked is a podcast that exists to make... Gosh, I'm going straight into the pitch. Even just like the tone and speed of my voice, I'm like,
I see you've practiced this front mirror a few times, eh?
I have, in the mirror. PhD Unpacked is... the goal of it is just to make university research... ties into our conversation. You plan this, you're crushing it, King. The goal of it is just to make university research just more accessible because like there is some really incredible stuff that's coming out of these institutions that really needs to help different communities. Like people often go to university to study undergrad, maybe to a PhD for a specific community, but is a 300-page document that is on an archive online that you only know about if you know that it exists. Is that really the best way for that to be published and produced? We didn't necessarily think so. So the podcast, we interview PhD authors about their research. The interviews are about an hour and 10, 20, and then we cut that under half an hour because, you know, as we said, people are busy. So, yeah, we've talked about season 1, we talked about the first episode, Pleasure, Pain, and Pornography, the role that pornography plays in the lives of contemporary adults. We've talked about...
What role does it play?
What role does it play? This episode was a long time ago. I think my main takeaways from that episode is that people need to talk about their pornography consumption a lot more. Honestly, in general, things that are taboo subjects, I'm like, we need to talk about them more. New Zealanders, in a vacuum, New Zealanders do not talk about things that are important to them. Fundamentally do not. We're much more like, oh, nah, it'll be all good. We need to talk about these things. Because otherwise you can then have people who maybe have a problematic relationship with them. First, if people were equipped with the skills, like we seemingly think that we should rely on parents at home to have these conversations with them. But then if those parents weren't educated about it in the first place, where are these kids going to understand that, okay, that happened in porn, it probably does not happen in day-to-day sex. That is probably not something you should do the first time you sleep with somebody. These are the conversations you need to have. They're not going to show that in porn, but that's because there isn't a wraparound conversation about it. We've also talked about the role that silence plays in young men bereaving the loss of a young male friend and like the lessons within that and understanding that a lot of young men, when it comes to any issues and especially the loss of a friend, revert to silence and understanding, okay, what is that type of silence? What does that mean? And understand that like it's okay because in a lot of times, and I can speak to this personally, like when there have been big, bad, traumatic things happen in my life, I just need to take some time to think about how I feel about it. So don't try chat to me. You know, give me some time. Let me come up with my decision, how I feel, and then maybe I can talk to with different people. We've talked about the role, the New Zealand's identity and how it's intertwined with the Olympics. We're about to... When is this episode going to come out, approx? Do you know?
Probably a couple of weeks.
Probably a couple of weeks? Easy. We're just about to release our season 2. And we're talking about education system, the narratives of stopping, starting, and using methamphetamine. Wow. Wild conversations about topics that we just do not talk about at all.
Wow. That's great. And is that all from those PhD students? Is this what their thesis is?
Yeah, this is what the thesis. So literally we just go to the university archive, type in a word like, I don't know, drug use or whatever, and then find these PhDs, send them an email. Kia ora, do you want to come and do an interview? And then we sit down with them and chat with them. Because it's like, they're doing incredible research.
Yeah, man.
But I'm somebody who is surrounded by people who are in like higher education. If I am not going to go read the PhD, why would the bro Ashton read it? You know? And that's not me saying, you know, any discredit to him, but it's like we need to make it more accessible so anybody can understand what is going on in these institutions and what research is coming out of them.
That's so wild that if you publish a thesis, you know, you spend 10 years of your life essentially grinding and producing this amazing, you know, piece of research. That it would just sort of sit there as a PDF on like a...
That's literally it. You'll have a hard copy, but you got to think about it. If you've done this research, you've been talking to your friends about it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, they're tired, they don't care. By the time you do it, you've been doing it for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, you're tired, you don't care. So it's just going to sit there on this online platform and no one's going to have access to it. Versus a little podcast, I can get behind that, and so should you at home.
Yeah, bro, that's fucking cool. That's so cool. What's like your drive to create, man? I think in New Zealand we have so many people that sort of shy away from doing stuff like this, whether it's setting up a podcast and putting their views or their thoughts out there to the world. Like, what pushes you to put your message out there?
It's a good question. Probably a little bit of arrogance and thinking that people care about what I am interested in. Like, if I'm being honest, I think that New Zealanders don't talk about a lot of things, and I want to maybe start to help somebody have conversations in some things. Also, I like making people laugh. So ultimately, like, a lot of stuff we do is funny, but I think in 2018, when I first started my podcast, before the one that I have with Kai, I told myself that in life, I'm going to give stuff a go. I'd rather be able to sit back at 40 and be like, remember when I was into podcasting? Like, remember when I podcasted? How funny was that? Then sit here and be like, oh, I didn't give that random thing a go. I didn't do it. And I think ultimately, people are more creative than we give them credit for. They've just maybe had it stunted by the people around them because we're also not very good to support other people on their journeys. Everybody has a rapper from school. And I honestly have so much.
Oh, you one of those SoundCloud rappers?
But the thing is, you know what? You doing that at school, you were way more confident in yourself than a lot of other people because you were like, I'm gonna give this a go. So we should support that. Look, I can't speak to whether your raps are any good.
I can see you some bars later.
Honestly, please do. Please do. But it's like, honestly, shout out to the high school rappers because they were putting themselves out there. They were risking it all when they knew that people might not be interested in it. And I would much rather risk it all, laugh about it in 10 years than sit here and be like, I might.
So for you, when it comes to the work that you're doing with podcasting and your media company, does it come back to if you were an older man not wanting to live your life in regret, essentially?
There's probably 15 reasons as to why I do what I do. That is one reason. I think also there is New Zealanders going through a changing of the guard moment with, I think people are in this kind of breaking down the constructions of society that we thought we had that were kind of limiting us. People are kind of putting themselves more out there. Ultimately, I want to make it easier for young black people in New Zealand to exist and see themselves on screens. I think I was listening to the episode that you did, I think a couple before this, and I think he said something and he said something like, if you can see it, you can become it.
Yes.
And because of the fact that just from numbers, like New Zealand doesn't have a lot of black people, if you're like a young black kid at school right now, you don't think you can, I don't know, start a podcast, do a media thing, do some education thing, do a PhD. You don't see that necessarily around you. And I'm not saying I'm going to be the biggest advocate or I'm the perfect person for that, but if I can give a platform to other people to express themselves, honestly, I'm going to be good with that. I'm going to pass away happy being like, I gave a platform for other people to do something that they enjoy.
Yeah,
you know, because it's not truly, I know we've talked about the things that I do. It is so much bigger than me. Kai and I tell each other this all the time. Like the stuff that we do, we're going to be gone eventually. We want it to still exist in a different form because somebody else would have taken over and decided, the way they did it was kind of whack. And I'll be either dead or I'll have to be happy with that because ultimately it is bigger than me. I'm trying to do this for other people.
Yeah, man, I love that. And it's, I think, going back to Peter's point where, you are what you see. I was talking to my girlfriend earlier today and she's like a competitive swimmer. Been to the Commonwealth Games, shout out Brona.
Damn, okay.
But she's Māori, and through swimming, which is a very white sport, she didn't see any really high achieving people that looked like her.
Yeah.
And we were literally having the exact same conversation on the car driving earlier today.
Yeah.
Talking about exactly that. You almost, it's that old thing, like you don't know what you don't know. I guess you can't see what you can't see.
Absolutely. And like, I think potentially in her example, she may have looked at examples like overseas of other people who may have looked like her. I know that I am heavily, heavily influenced by a lot of American and a lot of English media because there are a lot more black people who are in that space, who are putting themselves out there. So it's like, if anybody says representation doesn't matter, they are wrong. Representation matters, but it needs to be done in a genuine way. It's not just, putting somebody on a poster like, hey, we have black people at this institution. Do you?
Yeah, totally.
How was their experience? Trash? Okay, maybe let's focus on that instead of the poster.
That must get so frustrating when you see like really tokenistic approaches to representation and diversity.
It is a really tough one because if it's tokenistic for, say, me in this example, is it still worth me doing it if a young black kid can look and be like, oh, we can do that?
True.
Maybe it is. Maybe it is. I kind of toss and turn over whether it is, and whether me having an individual bad experience for maybe a short period of time is still worth it for somebody to look up and be like, oh, cool, I can do that. And I've used a black kid in this example. It could be anybody. Anybody looking up being like, oh, that person looks a little bit different. Cool, maybe I can give that a go. So it's really tough to weigh up like whether it's worth it. And I think it's ultimately just down to the individual in terms of whether, how bad is it going to be for your well-being if you do it?
Yeah, totally.
Like if you're like sacrificing a part of yourself to do it, then I don't think so. But if it's like, oh, I can appear in a prospectus and maybe some people will think that they can achieve while at university, maybe put your ego aside. Honestly, it's an individualistic thing.
When you first came to New Zealand, did you experience any racism, or like, you know, not even when you first came here, like, you know, coming out to today? And just your whole life in general. I think in New Zealand we're so naive about racism, and we're like, oh nah, that's our thoughts back in the olden days. We're not like that anymore. I'll be really interested if you're keen to speak about it. You know, like what has your experience been?
Yeah, I mean, I've experienced like discrimination, racism in like many different forms. Racism is also a lot bigger than just individual people's experiences. It's a structure around us, but you can do some research on that. There is a lot of literature that is way smarter than my small brain can comprehend. But yeah, absolutely experiencing discrimination. And I think on the first episode of PhD Unpacked Season 2, we talk about how New Zealanders don't actually talk about race. We don't talk about people's different experiences. We don't talk about people's different identities unless it's like, hey, that was racist. Hey, no, it wasn't. That is the only conversation we have. We need to have more conversations about it so we can better understand people's experiences. Because if I can better understand you, if you say, hey, Thabi, that thing that you said before, that was kind of wild and offensive, I'd be like, my bad. But if the only time you've ever talked about it is being like, Thabi, that was horrendously racist, it's like, I'm going to be defensive. And at that point, it's probably all over. So
Totally.
we need to have more conversations in comfortable spaces, but also have those uncomfortable conversations. New Zealand has a disgusting colonial history. We need to talk about that. Not talking about it and thinking that things are going to change as time passes, nothing is going to change. We need to have more conversations about that, about everything.
I guess that's where, like, you know, things like podcasting, have long form conversations about this sort of stuff.
We're having the conversations for the people. I mean, yeah, like ultimately, if you listen to a podcast about it and you sit there within your thoughts and maybe you change your opinion, great. Even better, talk about it with your friends.
Totally.
Also, the best way to promote a podcast is to talk about it with your friends. So, anybody listen to this, talk about this episode with your friends. Or if not this episode, a previous one you've listened to, or any of the projects that we work on. That is the best way to engage in a conversation. And it could be a good way to start the conversation. Like if you heard something that was like life-changing and you're a bit afraid to have the conversation with somebody, maybe say, yo, this podcast episode is great, you should listen to it. And then ask them, hey, what did you think about that? At minute 27 and 53 seconds, did you like what they said? We should talk about that. That's a segue into a tough conversation.
Yeah, totally, man. Uncomfortable conversations, and they need to be had, eh? They need to be had.
So much. And so many other different landscapes and aspects, and we will be able to cover. Like, people need to talk more. Because the thing is, coming back to the accountability point, whenever somebody says something problematic, disgusting, racist, horrible, does something in that way, my mind often goes to, where were your homies? When you were 12, 13, 14, 15 years old and you were saying and doing those things, where were they? Were they egging you on knowing that it was disgusting? Were they like laughing with you? Were they saying, yeah, no, that's a good thing to say? Or were they actually being like, hey, bro, I don't think we don't need to kind of say that anymore? Because if you're not going to hold them accountable at that point in time, when they're 40, 50, 60, that's just them. That's a part of their identity. So we need to have these conversations with young kids, with young adults, with everybody, because otherwise it gets to a point where it's like, okay, I've got to change my entire mindset, which is a lot harder than telling somebody 15, we just shouldn't say that term anymore because X, Y, Z.
Totally. There's been so many times where I've been like just thinking back to my adolescence and being like a young little fart.
Yeah, tough. Yeah, me too.
It was hard times, but sitting in the car with like my friends, we must be like 7, and then their dad, and this one guy. I won't name his name. But,
Name it. Nah, don't do it.
But his family, they were South African, white South Africans. They came over here, and it wasn't until just recently I was thinking back. I was like, fuck, man, he used to say some really racist shit to us in the car, like horrible stuff. I think he told us about the term cheeky darkies.
Yeah.
And like, it wasn't until, I was honestly in my early 20s, I was like, this memory just popped out to me. I was like, how fucked up was that?
And that's what happens with like trauma sometimes. You just, at the time, you're just like maybe vibing because you're literally 7 and you're unsure what's going on. And then when you have the cognitive abilities and the verbiage and the language to talk about how that made you feel, you're like, damn, that was rough. And like,
also think like, fuck you to that person being so irresponsible to say that to younger kids who don't really, obviously we know that that's not right, but you're not confident enough to, you're like, okay,
you're
what
7 years
is
old. This is, your friend's parents are like so
They're
cool
like
to
gods,
you.
bro.
Exactly.
They're gods.
So I do not expect any 7-year-old to be like, Derek, I did not like that comment.
Totally.
So yeah, no, there is, yeah. And the thing is, that person would have had friends around them who they obviously would have enabled that type of language, or someone who would have been like, oh no, that's just them. And that comment, that's just them. People have more propensity to change than you give them credit for.
Yeah, 100%.
It may take time, but people can change, they can grow, they can develop. I mean, look, I went to an all-boys school in Wellington. There were some interesting things that were being said at that point in time, things that I'd like to think I can't even comprehend, that never enter my mind now. But I'm fortunate enough that I've had wonderful people around me that have held me accountable, being like, hey, Thabi, that's not cool. Don't do that. And you don't need to do it in front of everybody. You can just pull them to the side and say, hey, no, you shouldn't be saying that. And because of that, I'm now less of a trash human being. Hopefully, touch wood. Honestly, maybe should ask people around me before I keep harping on about it on a podcast. But
I'm sure there's merit to it.
Hey, I have the platform. I am going to speak my mind. But yeah,
bro.
like we're products of our environment, and if our environment is one that holds people accountable, there's going to be some form of growth. And I'm blessed in that sense because, of course, you can intentionally choose the people around you. In some cases, some people are just plopped there, and then they become a seminal part of your growth and development.
Yeah, man, 100%. It's like what would be some of your biggest regrets if you get to the age of, let's say, a nice age of 100, and you look back on your life?
Gosh, first you do not want to make it to 100.
You
Biggest, no.
Like longer?
Oh no, I think for me,
What's the peak that you're on?
I think for me, my quick wit, cognitive abilities are such a seminal part of my identity.
So when they start going?
And when they start going, it's going to be tough.
If they go.
If they ever go, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to sit here and say that when I'm not as funny as I maybe think I am, cut the cord. I'm not saying that, because what if that happens in 5 years? I got things I want to do. So if I get to that age, I mean, hopefully I won't regret anything. I think if there's one thing that I think now I can comfortably say that I regret to a certain degree, is some of the ways that I've treated different people in my life at different points in my life. I think time is wonderful, but also painful, because it means you think about different situations, different people a lot. So that would be something which I think everybody probably regrets, because nobody's perfect, and that is obviously true. I think some people also use that as a defense mechanism to not try change their behavior. But there are just some certain situations where I'm like, I should have treated that person better. I should have done this. I should have done that. But in terms of like working kind of context, I think I kind of forgive myself in a sense of, if I don't say go with an opportunity, I'm like, cool. At that point in time, I thought not doing that was the best thing for me. I'm not going to look back negatively, because, hey, that's what I thought at the time. In hindsight, it was wrong. I'm asleep easy at night.
That would be,
What would be yours, actually?
Yeah, it's interesting. I sometimes think of it. I think it's like living a life that wasn't fulfilled.
How would you describe a fulfilled life? Like, what is fulfillment to you?
But I think that's something
I'm the podcast host now. What is fulfillment to you?
I think it's something that you feel. It's probably very subjective to the person. It's probably something you can only feel when you're that
when
age.
You're in it?
Yeah. Well, when you're in it, but I think also afterwards.
Yeah.
I think when I'm most fulfilled, it's when I'm, spending time with my family. I'm looking after my body. I'm healthy, and I'm doing shit which I'm passionate about. I'm getting humbled on the mats at jiu-jitsu.
Yes, king. Yes.
Just heaps of stuff like that. So,
do you prioritize those things in your life?
Yeah, I do. I'm becoming, when you get more older, I feel like you.
Nice. That's a great answer. I'm really happy for you. That's dope.
Yeah, I feel like you start to sort of lean into that sort of stuff. And
Yeah.
it's hard with the 9 to 5 grinds. Like, so much of that can just be soul destroying.
Hey, you are not wrong.
Dude, 100%. And I feel like, yeah, I like what you do because you're part-time, right?
Yeah, I work part-time in government, and then I do my media stuff / everything else on the side.
Yeah.
I mean, I say on the side, I'm literally working in some capacity every single day, thinking about it, thinking, oh, cool, got to post that, which isn't healthy. And it's something which, I mean, I currently have carpal tunnel, so has taught me that, hey, your body has boundaries. You know, sometimes you got to slow down, and sometimes when you don't slow down, your body's like, let's pump the brakes.
Carpal tunnel is such an interesting name as well, eh?
Yeah, it's real strange.
Yeah.
I did not know. I think it's because you have carpal in your wrists. If I'm incorrect, I'm sorry. But that is what I'm going to go with, and I'm going to say it with my chest.
And where's the tunnel bit come from?
Honestly, don't know. Have no idea.
Sounds pretty cool though. Someone says it. It almost sounds like you've got like a new like item or something.
And like the wrist splints that I have, I think are relatively stylish.
They're kind of steezy, bro.
Thank
They're
you.
good.
Thank
They're
you.
good.
It's also just a nice conversation start of people like, oh, what's that on your wrist? And it's like, yeah, okay, let's talk about it.
Yeah.
But it's so nice that you're like living a more fulfilled life. Because I mean, I imagine there are times where it's like other things have had to be a priority. But
For sure. I think, I think the more you get older, well, that's something. The more I'm getting older, I want to be more conscious of what my passions are and design my life to fulfill those passions or fulfill those needs as best as you can.
What passions would you say you have?
Podcasting, like I love doing this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I love meeting new people.
Yeah.
I think being another passion for mine is like, you know, challenging myself in some capacity. Earlier this year, last year, I did like this Goggins challenge.
Oh, yeah.
Where I ran 4 miles
Yes,
every 4 hours for 48 hours.
I saw this on the gram. That's wild. I would never do that.
Dude,
Honestly, good on you.
It was one of the most like fulfilling things I've probably ever done in terms of not knowing I could do it and then actually achieving
Everyone
it.
says that about running, and I'm like, yeah, but you look like you're hating it while you're doing it, fam.
Bro, and you do. That's the thing with running. Like, it is absolutely miserable. No one enjoys it. You're just in the hurt locker. It's tough. You want to quit. But then, you know, afterwards you get this like dopamine release.
Yeah.
And I think you can always refine and see, you know, what your potential is through those physical endeavors
Yeah.
in a weird, deep way.
I begrudgingly agree because I'm trying to experience as much joy as I can in my life. And yes, but for me, I think sport, in terms of fulfillment, I was thinking on the way here, what actually makes me happy. And one of the things that makes me, one of the times where I'm most happy, and I haven't actually been able to do it for like 2 years, is playing basketball on Sunday morning with my friends. It's like the phone's down, you're talking that ish, it's just you, competition. It really takes me back to that like childlike joy where you'd come home from school and go do whatever sport. You'd bike around, you'd play a bit of football, and those moments are so nice. And unfortunately, because of injuries and not taking good care of my body, especially when I was younger, I haven't been able to for a couple of years, but like that for me is like pure joy. Even when you have a bad day, it is just pure joy. And I think someone, I can't remember who it was, told me that they're just trying to find their childlike joy more this year. And I'm like,
I like
that's
that.
a good way to view it. Because
I
there are a
like
lot of
that.
things that we did as kids that maybe because we aren't as good at it as we think we should be because society makes us only do things that we're good at, that we don't do anymore. And it's just like, those moments of joy where you were only thinking about that are so bliss.
It is and like time goes out the window. You're
it
in, like,
does.
you know, flow state.
Yeah, and you're so annoyed when it's like, it's 11? What?
Bro, how shit is being an adult and growing up again?
It's like, the thing is,
it's got its good parts, obviously.
It's got its good parts and bad parts. I think and I think our generation is just making more choices around what we actually want to do. You know, like the fact that I'm working part-time because I want to do this media stuff. I want to do stuff outside of work. This is a decision that, like, if you plot me 20 years ago, that wouldn't even be considered. I'd be on my 9 till 5 grind. But fortunately, my parents sacrificed to the point where I can make this decision for myself.
That's amazing.
And of course, maybe we butt heads over the decisions that I'm making. You know, having a maybe more stable job would be great. But ultimately, it's like joy is something that people should prioritize. Joy and love are the things that keep us going in life. And I think we should prioritize them more. And hearing that you're prioritizing that, fire.
As best as you can.
Exactly.
You got to
'cause,
try best.
Yeah, you got it. You also got to pay the bills.
Yeah,
ETC,
right.
like
Fucking bills. Jesus. Sweet man. I think we'll move to some quick fire questions.
absolutely, I talk too much.
Oh, we
Apologies.
kind of just covered it, but what brings you true happiness?
Brings the true happiness. A belly laughing with my friends, like that belly where you're wheezing, where there's no sound. There's no sound, and you're like hitting each other, like, and someone's just adding a little bit more to that joke. Oh, those moments, and I can think back to like specific moments where that's happened, and it's like it genuinely just brings a smile to me. Another form, basketball as well, and I think traveling, but because of the fact that it gives you the manufactured feeling of no responsibilities.
Yeah, true.
Because ultimately, I think our responsibilities make us feel stressed. Like we got to pay rent. We got to go to do this podcast episode, even though that brings you joy. It's like, okay, so I got to fill up the car. I got to do this. I got to do that. But it's when you're on holiday and you've got no responsibilities. You can sit inside and watch TV all day. You can go to the beach all day. You can watch like a YouTube video all day. Like that gives you joy. Those moments of like escapism, you know?
You sold me, mate. I've just been watching The White Lotus on, I don't know if you've seen that.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, bro, so good.
I've heard, I'm not good at like watching TV. I just don't, sadly, I love watching TV. I don't really have the time, I think, for me in particular, is a poor excuse because it's just something which I just haven't prioritized. Because I can prioritize a lot of things. I obviously just do not prioritize that.
And fair enough. It's like, it's always going to be there for you,
It's
TV.
like media, joy, like it's love. Anyway, keep going the quick fire, be talking too much.
Sweet, man. Advice you wish you knew about when you were younger?
That's a good one. And like because I've listened to a few of these episodes, I should have been prepared for this, but I was like, I don't know. I think to forgive myself for decisions that I made in the moment. Like I've spent a lot of time thinking, analyzing previous things that I've done, and be like, why did I do that? And I think understanding where I was at that point in time, it's like, I thought that was the best decision, and I need to be okay with that because it's in the past. I can't do anything about it.
That's good.
So I think that's the bit of advice I'd give.
I like that. What does legacy mean to you?
Yeah, I've thought about this one.
Good man.
Legacy is, this is quick fire. Legacy to me means how you have impacted the people around you. That when you aren't in the room, how do people talk about you?
Love that. And last one. No, got two more. If you could change one thing in New Zealand, what would this be?
I would change the education system.
How?
Oh gosh. I would. That's tough. How? I didn't expect.
What would you do to change it?
Actually, what I would do is, I think I would increase the salaries of teachers and make it more like lucrative to become a teacher, because we shouldn't have teachers doing it for the love. They should be able to do it because it gives them a good life, ultimately. Then we get more people who are out there who would be good teachers doing the job. And also, even framing somebody as a good teacher or bad teacher, there are a lot of characteristics. It's kind of reductionist to do that.
Yeah.
But I think that is one thing that I'd do.
Bro, you've got my vote. Jeez. But we all know like a good teacher.
We can speak to moments in our life where we've had
Totally.
that good teacher. And unfortunately, because of cost of living crisis, because of everything, people are only doing it for the love. And I don't think they should have to do that. They should do it because they can live a good life as well.
100%. Yeah, I totally agree with that. Last one. What do you believe is the main thing that's holding back young people in New Zealand?
Old people in New Zealand. Nah, I'm still that answer. No. I know. I was listening to it today. That was a great answer. I think last year I read a book, Decolonizing Aotearoa, and it spoke a lot about imagination. No, was it I think I got the wrong book, but it spoke about imagination and limiting the imagination. So I think the thing that's holding them back is is the confines of what they can see and feel and view. The world is large, the opportunities are plentiful. Try and imagine things outside of what you see in front of you is what I would say. Yes.
You're so beautifully articulate.
I mean, honestly, I've been podcasting a lot. It's just a different part of my personality.
Yeah.
Off the mic, it's cool and it's a different conversation.
No, it's good.
Hey, appreciate it.
Thabi, keep doing what you're doing, brother. I love
you.
the work that you're doing. Any opportunity that I can do to, promote what you guys are doing with Unpack.
Stop it.
Love the message you guys are doing. Where can people keep in touch with you and your money?
Yes, so you can keep in touch with us for Unpack. That is at UnpackNZ on Instagram. For PhD Unpacked, it is at PhD Unpacked on Instagram. And for me, because I post about everything that we do, bit of tomfoolery, bit of just hooliganism, THABISO SIBANDA, gosh, pronounced my own name wrong, on Instagram. And from there, you'll be able to get access to anything and everything. And Spotify, wherever you listen to things as well.
Awesome. We'll chuck links in wherever you listen to this as
it,
well.
King.
Awesome. Cheers, brother. Appreciate it.
Cheers, mate. Great episode.